Ever since we did our video on moms in fighting games, and naturally followed it up with dads in fighting games, we've seen suggestions to cover many other types of family members: siblings, grandparents, sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, third cousins twice removed, okay, not that last one, but with so many members of the family tree connecting fighting game characters to each other, we decided to combine all of those ideas into one by looking at the groups of fighters that are families. They can be siblings, parent and child, or anything else that constitutes them as a family, and with the mom list being a birthday gift for my own mom last year, that means that this list is a birthday gift to my mom this year, and she'll be joining once again to add a level of family to this topic.
I'm happy to be back to discuss families in fighting games. We'll be ranking these families based on their love and support of each other. Oh, who are we kidding? We all like a juicy family feud.
We'll only be judging playable family members, since there's a lot of non-playable family and backstories. Also, one family per series of origin, with the SNK fighting games counting as different series. What I'm getting at is we're going to see multiple entries from families that eventually ended up in King of Fighters, but each started off in different games. Now, let's come together to review our top 10 families in fighting games. Number 10, the Lee brothers from Street Fighter. Street Fighter doesn't have too many playable families. Many of them are NPCs, like Guile's family, Dalsim's family, and Ken's family. Still waiting on Mel to become playable someday. However, there were a few options in terms of playable siblings. You have Cammy and the Dolls, the Illuminati brothers, and Goken and Akuma, with Ryu in the mix as Goken's adopted son and Akuma's possible biological son according to some media. But the duo of siblings that has the strongest bond in a relation to an older character would be Yun and Yang. They're so close that you can't have one without the other, except in that one Street Fighter Alpha port and all those crossovers. They balance each other out personality-wise, with Yun being the more adventurous one that goes into fights out of intrigue, and Yang being the calm and collected one who goes along because he's not just gonna leave his brother behind. Plus, they have a sibling rivalry. Yang can't just let Yun get more practice without trying to match his brother. They both learned Kung Fu from their Uncle Lee, who was an opponent back in the first Street Fighter game, so there's a nice family connection to a legacy character. Despite the limited movement in that game, you can still see how Lee's running punch translated over to Yun and Yang's moveset, a nice nod to some overlooked lore from the original game. Lee has since been retconned to be a master of the drunken fist, so he may have taught the brothers a different style of martial arts than what he practiced, considering he's the only one in the family that carries a jug of sake around all the time. Regardless, he taught them well, as the brothers are quite agile but still pack a punch.
What a combination, speed and power and a drunk uncle. All the ingredients for a great sitcom if this doesn't work out. Does the alcohol make him a better fighter?
I would assume so, but what really made Lee a great fighter in the first game were the poor controls for the player. Overall though, Yun and Yang carry on the Lee family legacy well, overwhelming the opponents with pressure and quick moves. They may be skilled with skateboards and rollerblades, but they're plenty fast without them.
Yeah! Can't stand up to my customer. Time to show off a little.
Number 9, Donovan and Anita from Darkstalkers. This family is built as an all-in-one character. Donovan does all the fighting as Anita watches him from the sidelines. She follows him wherever he goes on screen and runs to his side after some matches. She's like a really quiet cheerleader who just stands around.
Is she really just standing there, or is she doing something sinister with her eyes?
Well, since we said they had to be playable at some point, Anita technically can fight based on her one playable appearance in Marvel Superheroes, where she fires objects with telekinesis, so maybe she does something to you with those large uncanny eyes for some sort of ESP effect against whoever Donovan's fighting. For all we know, she's pulling a Chaozu assist for Tien, but assuming she is just innocently standing off to the side for her Darkstalkers appearances, it's good visual storytelling for Donovan and his relationship with Anita. The lore is that Donovan felt sympathy for the orphaned Anita. She was shunned by her peers in society because of her mysterious powers. Donovan himself was a loner, having vampire blood in his veins, so he understands the sadness and isolation that Anita feels. He stays away from people in case the vampiric part of him ever tries to take over. He does a good job job at restraining his dark side so he can continue his mission of ridding the world of evil and protecting Anita. He has a lot of positive energy to help the both of them, including spirits of fire, ice, and electricity to fight with, along with a big-ass sword with teeth. He should really invest in a water spirit too, since this man can surf on his sword.
I don't think he even needs superpowers with that sword, though I wouldn't mind if he wanted to share one of them with me. Which one would I want? Definitely electricity. I want to be ready the next time the power goes out.
Despite how in command he looks while he fights, Donovan knows the vampire blood in his system is a ticking time bomb. He either has to die a hero defending the innocent, or live long enough to see himself become a villain, so his battles also double as a lesson for Anita. He wants to make sure that when he's gone, he passes his values and skills down to his daughter so that she's prepared to take down any of the wicked Darkstalkers, and possibly even Donovan himself if he becomes corrupted. Since the arcade mode endings are generally treated as what-if scenarios, let's hope Donovan can truly find a way to have a peaceful ending for both Anita and himself. Number 8. The Kusanagis from King of Fighters. Kyo has a good amount of family that we saw in the King of Fighters visual novel, but in terms of playable family members from the fighting games, we have the classic King of Fighters protagonist Kyo Kusanagi and his father Saishu. I like how they demonstrate the father-like-son dynamic. They have their conflicts, but you can see how Saishu has influenced his son. Kyo takes the fight seriously, but he likes to show off. He's cocky, but he can back it up. His father also has a serious side, but you can tell he loves to show off his skills as well. Saishu always seems in good spirits, having a smile on his face as if he's saying, "Yeah, I still got it." Saishu is old school cool, while Kyo is modern cool, for the 90s. Saishu seems like he was a good dad since he taught his son to fight and passed on his values of honor and flair to Kyo, but we barely got to see them interact. Saishu went off to fight warriors all over the world at some point during Kyo's life, including a challenge against the first final boss of King of Fighters, Rugal Bernstein. Saishu lost and was then brainwashed into joining Rugal. Kyo was reunited with his father when he was a sub-boss in King of Fighters 95, protecting Rugal. This is where Kyo was able to beat his father and snap him out of it. With this, Saishu saw his son was strong enough to beat him, meaning Kyo had the power to take on the evil in the world, so Saishu had no qualms about going into self-exile in response to learning that he worked with the villains.
I'm sorry, you don't go into self-exile after finally reuniting with your long-lost son. It's like a bad Lifetime movie ending. Wouldn't you want to spend time together?
Well, he also used this opportunity to watch his son from afar, as we saw in one of the arcade mode endings. He's still being a good dad from a distance.
Why from afar? Why not from near?
I can't really justify him. I'm just trying to explain his methods. After working for an evil guy, he thought he needed to leave society as a way to atone.
So do community service. They could fight for a good cause and raise money.
I guess that's the Kusanagi family. They've mastered their fighting skills, but maybe they don't make the best decisions all the time. Hopefully Kyo knows when he should and shouldn't follow in his father's footsteps. Number 7. The Clovers from BlazBlue. BlazBlue has a few families available, and while the cat girl scientist with a witch for a mom and a literal cat for a dad seems like a prime candidate for the BlazBlue entry, I feel what's happening over at the Clover household grabs my attention a little more. The father Relius is attempting to win the Worst Dad of the Year award the same way that one dad from Full Metal Alchemist did. Relius turned his wife and daughter into robot cyborg puppet things, and his son Carl hates him for what he's done to the family. Carl loves his sister, and I assume he loved his mother too, so the fact that his dad did this to them for the sake of research and experimentation without a purpose enrages him. As robots, the wife and daughter have no free will or thought. Their souls power the vessels, so their conscience is locked away in there somewhere. Despite being created by Relius, Carl uses the robot of his sister Ada in battle for his more righteous causes.
Usually parents say don't fight with your sister, but in this case, fight with your sister.
That being said, Relius counters by using the puppet with the soul of his wife whenever he needs to fight. So if it's ever Carl versus Relius, you have the whole family in the arena.
It gives a new meaning to having a puppet show. Kids, this one's not for you.
While it's hard to tell if the souls ever have a moment of lucidity, you can still feel the bond between Carl and Ada, even if it's mostly Carl trying to reminisce or break through. The mom Ignis gets the worst end of this since she's stuck fighting aside the man that never seemed to care for her.
Why doesn't she just squish him to death? Is she afraid she'll be a robot forever? Isn't there someone else who can turn her back?
Unfortunately, without anything to spark her memory, she's just an emotionless robot who listens to Relius whenever he needs her. Otherwise, I guess she's inactive.
She's reduced to being a 3-in-1 souped-up Dyson appliance, though I do have to say my 3-in-1 air purifier heater and fan is very useful, and it doesn't take up much space. That's probably what Relius thinks about her.
This video is not sponsored.
The main reason Carl has protected his father in any capacity is because Relius claims that he can still restore the humanity of his sister and mom by transferring their souls into new vessels. As dreadful as Relius is, he told Carl that he'd never lie to him, and to be fair, that is his best attribute. Carl was completely aware of everything that was going on because Relius never hid anything, so I guess credit where it's due. Carl has prevented his father from certain death only because of the love for the rest of his family, so Carl's motivations still seem justified. However, in one plotline, he showed the desire to experiment on other characters solely to save his sister, so he may have more traits of his father than he thinks. Though part of that was from supernatural mind-warping dimensional issues going on in the world rather than his natural character progression, so let's hope the apple falls as far from the tree as possible in this case. Number 6, the Kisuke's from Guilty Gear. The base of this family is the father Kai Kisuke, the mother Dizzy, and their son Sin-Sun, but it goes a bit deeper than that. The gist of the Guilty Gear universe is that there are these biological weapons of war known as gears, some of which are humanoid. Dizzy is a gear, but she is benevolent and shows that gears can be civil in human society, even if the public consensus is that they're dangerous. With Dizzy being a gear and Kai being a human, it means that Sin is half gear, which is why he looks like he's a teenager after about 3 years, as gears age quickly and then stop aging. What's more interesting is that when Kai had to protect his son's gear identity from the public when serving as the leader of a kingdom, he begrudgingly sent his son into hiding outside of the kingdom to be raised and trained by his rival Soul Bad Guy, who's also a gear that broke away from the war and found his identity. Soul's lover was a female gear named Justice, whose memories were locked away after being turned into a full-time weapon. Justice had a daughter though, Dizzy, so with Justice being the mother of Dizzy, that means Soul Bad Guy, you are the father. Well, technically it isn't 100% confirmed, but we basically know Soul is Dizzy's dad, so with all of that, Soul is not just an acquaintance of Kai, but he is Sin's grandfather. After spending quality time with Grandpa Soul, Sin has a cool mashup of his grandfather and father's fighting styles, along with his own flair. Sin is very mobile, just like how Soul and Kai can fly and flip all over the stage, but Sin has the added help from his pole. He also has the lightning that his father uses in his attacks, only with a red tint and some extra pole shenanigans. I'm glad he found a way to apply some of Kai's electricity despite mostly learning from Soul.
I could have used some of Kai's energy when the power was out. I would have had to throw out everything from the freezer when the lights came back on.
The most interesting mechanic that Sin has from neither mentor is he has to keep his calories up or else he gets tired. I'm sure the other guys also get hungry too, but they don't show it. Sin just takes out a hunk of meat during the fight when he's hungry.
I've used Sin's meat eating strategy before, but they didn't like that when I did it in the middle of my yoga class. Hey, I needed strength for those downward dog poses.
Either way, Soul, Kai, and Dizzy raised a kid with an appetite for both protein and success.
Win.
Number 5. The Alexandras from Soul Calibur. The story starts with Sophia, who was sent on a mission by the Greek gods to destroy the wicked sword Soul Edge. With the help of others, she was initially successful, but you can't keep Soul Edge down for long. With Sophia being one of the main pursuers of it early in the timelines, she was a vital part of the team to take down this resilient evil. However, during a peaceful period, she met the blacksmith Rothian and they started a family together. Not wanting to distract Sophia from caring for her new children, her sister Cassandra took Sophia's place when Soul Edge returned. Cassandra went to the Shrine of the Gods and demanded her sister's weapons, but without Sophia's knowledge of her doing so. Sophia assures for the safety of her whole family, including Cassandra, so she had new weapons made and chased after her. Their overall interactions throughout the series involve supporting one another by stopping one another, which is why they fight so much. They always want to stop the other one from making the wrong decision, and they're pretty evenly matched when they know each other's moves and such.
They walk softly and carry a big sword. My kind of weapon, too.
Their movesets are similar, but definitely not the same. Cassandra is more aggressive and can fight better in your face, while Sophia is more balanced, with longer range on her strikes and better defensive options. Though, both of them are incredibly graceful and acrobatic, with stances that allow them to walk forward and avoid whatever's coming their way, accompanied by a sharp follow-up attack.
I wonder how many calories they burn in a fight. I'd love to take a combination self-defense exercise class from them. Now I know what you can get me for my next birthday. I want the sword.
But they got those swords from the gods, and they were on a journey for years.
Well, get started.
As mentioned on our mom list, Sophia protected Soul Edge in the story of Soul Calibur 4 because her daughter Pyrrha was exposed to it and needed the wicked sword intact to survive. However, when Soul Edge was destroyed, Sophia still had a shard of it in her from an old fight, so she implanted that shard in her daughter, which saved Pyrrha but led to Sophia's untimely death. A great mom moment, but a harsh blow to the family, especially since Cassandra also disappeared because of a time rift or some wacky dimensional baloney. Still, the Alexandra family lived on through Sophia's kids. Unfortunately, the Soul Calibur 5 story was quite flawed and didn't exactly portray the characters in the best light. I love the game's mechanics, but Sophia's son Patroclus was arrogant and naive, killing a bunch of people because he got duped by the main villain and didn't really pay for it. He just had a realization one day, hey, maybe I should stop being a dummy, and then he was honorable all of a sudden and used Setsuka's moveset for some reason. Sophia's daughter Pyrrha was cool though. She was scared of the world, but she could go berserk at any time due to the Soul Edge in her, and I loved playing as Pyrrha Omega, even though she just had the same moveset as one of the Alexandria sisters, just more angry. The idea of Patroclus fearing his sister for being malfested and having a conflict on what to do was good, but it was resolved too quickly with Patroclus just saying, maybe I shouldn't do that. I like that they attempted to continue the family legacy, but hopefully the Soul Calibur 6 timeline reboot will give Sophia's kids another chance to expand their story more cleanly someday.
I can't! KO. I'm sorry. I can't take any more of this.
Number 4. The Cage family from Mortal Kombat. Like a lot of Mortal Kombat fans, my favorite parts of the story are the more mystical elements. Between the cyborgs, ninjas, and everything going on in Outworld, there's a lot to cover. However, Mortal Kombat X and 11 had a strong focus on the military special forces, which was never my favorite part of the franchise, but I did like how Johnny Cage's family was portrayed at least. Johnny was a goofball, but he was a dad joke goofball. He clearly cared for his family even after his divorce from his wife Sonya. He was just frustrated that she never made time for the family and knew the real her was distracted by her hunt for Kano and any invading forces. And of course he cares for his daughter Cassie, who indirectly brought him away from his party lifestyle to raise her properly. He wanted Cassie to grow up to be the best that she could be, and he wanted Sonya to be around to experience the family moments that they planned on. The fact that Johnny and Sonia got back together after their divorce and after the forces of the Netherrealm were defeated shows that their family bond will truly never fade away. And hey, each one of them defeated a major Netherrealm enemy in Mortal Kombat X.
Although they don't fight together, they win together.
I think the best part of the Mortal Kombat 11 story was the beginning. There was the peak of family happiness and despair. You could see the pride in the parents when Cassie was promoted, and the fear in Cassie when her mom was stuck under the rubble. There was raw emotion when her team had to drag her away from trying to individually pull out each rock. From a gameplay perspective, you can see how both parents influenced Cassie. Her moveset is still her own and not just copy-paste attacks, but there's some Cage family magic mixed in that makes Cassie so versatile in the ring.
It must be the combination of splits and combat training they passed down to their daughter.
There's also the family gene of the green glow plot point, but we can just say good old muscle and firepower is why this family is so dominant.
I see a reality show in their future if there's no more evil left to fight. But they might fight over top billing.
Commander Cage, reporting for duty.
Number 3, the Bogards from Fatal Fury. In the first Fatal Fury game, it was up to the Bogard brothers, Terry and Andy, to avenge their father's death. The man that killed him was Geese Howard, and he was running a fighting tournament because, I don't know, he has hubris and a lot of money from being a mob boss. Of the 3 playable characters in the first game, you could run through the tournament with either brother, defeat Geese, and then Geese would allow himself to fall off his own tower if he lost, I guess because he's evil and he knows a couple of nice guys like the Bogards would not want him to die like this. Heh, now you showed him. The canonical winner of the first tournament was Terry, but if you're an Andy fan, you can say he won. Andy gets the short end of the stick a lot. After that, the Bogards each did their own thing. When they entered the King of Fighters series, they were usually on the same team with their friend Joe, so they always stuck by each other, but sometimes Andy wanted to pursue his own dreams, like training a kid how to fight, which led him to not joining their team on occasion, or having a separate plotline away from Terry and other Fatal Fury games. Terry, though, was always game to fight, so he was playable anytime there was a tournament. Family of Geese Howard is running some new tournament? Sure. A guy is trying to unlock a demon, but there's a competition attached to it? Why not? You get to meet Mario? Sign him up. It also helps that fans love Terry and want him in every game possible, with all of those iconic punches, kicks, and ground smashes.
That slow, powerful punch of Terry's really gets the job done. And boy, have I felt like smashing the ground too. But you'd wind up taking me to the emergency room if I did. No geysers for me. I wonder if he's ever struck oil.
Winner. Okay.
However, the family goes beyond just the brothers. When Geese died and his wife was also presumed dead, he had a son, Rock Howard. Terry, being the upstanding fellow that he is, adopted Rock so he could grow up with a parental figure to look up to. From then on, we saw Terry just doing dad things with Rock in various arcade endings and promotional artwork. Terry seems very comfortable with it. He looks like he's having a genuinely fun time with Rock. When Rock became playable as a teenager in Garo Mark of the Wolves, Terry's influence was still prevalent as Rock was using some of his adoptive dad's techniques. However, being aware of his biological family's past, Rock was also tempted by Geese's brother-in-law Kane, who claims he had info on Rock's mom, who was allegedly alive somewhere. Terry, being the understanding dude that he is, let Rock go off with this questionable fellow since he knew Rock cared for his mom despite not getting to know her well. Being a good son, Rock promised that he'd return to Terry someday, and that's the last entry we got in the Fatal Fury series, so this mystery is still open. Though we can see there's a family bond here, as Rock would never fully abandon Terry for this mission, and Terry understands that sometimes you have to let your kids roam free and follow their ambitions. Number 2, the Sakazakis from Art of Fighting. This series takes place in the same timeline as Fatal Fury and eventually was merged with King of Fighters, but it still has its own storylines, drama, and iconic characters, some of which belong to the Sakazaki residence. The father Takuma has been featured on my karate and masked fighter lists, so to summarize his backstory from those videos, he used to pummel members of the city's drug cartel run by Geese Howard, different series, same evil, so so Geese made a proposal to Takuma. He works for the cartel, and Takuma's family won't get hurt. Takuma had to begrudgingly accept, but wore a mask to conceal his identity with the codename Mr. Karate. When Geese's second-in-command, Mr. Big, took Takuma's daughter Yuri hostage, Takuma's son Ryo and Ryo's friend Robert Garcia went into action. When Ryo got to Mr. Karate after beating the chain of goons, Takuma used it as a training exercise for his son, expecting Ryo to go all out without knowing Mr. Karate was really his father. Ryo won, Yuri stopped him from killing Takuma after learning he was their father, and then Takuma told them the same story that I just told you. Takuma had Yuri join his training regimen so she would be prepared if such a situation rose up again. From then on, we got to see wholesome family times. The second Art of Fighting added Takuma and Yuri to the roster. Takuma used it as an opportunity to get revenge on Geese for making him work for the cartel, and Yuri used it to show off that she can fight for herself. When the group appeared in the King of Fighters series, you generally saw the family team up, along with Robert, who was basically family. He was around all the time, so he was like Takuma's third kid. Or should I say son-in-law? Okay, doesn't look like it, but he cares for the Sakazakis like family. The father-son bond that Takuma and Ryo have while fighting shows in their similar fighting styles. It varies on how each of them plays depending on the game, but they both like utilizing their Zanretsuken, the rapid punches, key projectiles, and parries, just to name a few abilities. Ryo also has a couple of games where he enters under the title of Mr. Karate 2, which is a sweet homage to his father.
They really pack a punch, and a kick too. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end.
However, Yuri has my favorite moveset of the family. She uses a modified version of the family style of martial arts that's a lot faster. She still has the ki and the kicks, but she has hustle while doing it. She runs, jumps, and slaps like her life depends on it.
And the speed of Yuri's dive kicks. Did she have a 5-hour energy drink before the match? She could do commercials for them.
Drink 5-hour energy. Hours of energy now, no crash later, and no health bar for whoever I fight against.
I feel there is no overall family more prominent in fighting games than number 1, the Mishima clan. This family has some issues, and there's a lot to go over. The original 2 playable members were Heihachi, the father, and Kazuya, the son, living out their family feud in the first 2 games. I really like the stories in Tekken 1 and 2. I wish they lasted a little longer since we've just been in the modern era ever since the Tekken 3 time skip. These stories sort of felt cozy and smaller scale, if that makes sense. However, Tekken 7 at least gives us some insight on the past. Heihachi's wife Kazumi had some devil power in her, and with her family's hatred of the Mishima clan, it was destined to come out to kill Heihachi. When this came to be, Heihachi delivered a devastating blow to kill the devil, which also killed Kazumi, so younger Kazuya viewed this as his dad killing his mom and hated him for that, understandably so. To be fair, Heihachi does do a poor job of explaining things. It also doesn't help that Heihachi threw Kazuya off a cliff as a child to teach him to be tough. This is where some of the retcons kick in. To save himself, Kazuya tapped into some devil power. He either made a deal with the devil not to die, or by throwing him off the cliff, Heihachi activated the genetically inherited devil powers that Kazuya got from his mother that would have came out at some point. The latter is the current canonical story, and I like it better, but some plotlines also add that Heihachi threw Kazuya off the cliff to either activate or eradicate the devil inside of him in addition to teaching him toughness.
Heihachi has a unique way of performing an exorcism. I wonder what Linda Blair would have to say about that.
So Kazuya is raised by Heihachi and loathes his father his entire life. He plans his revenge by entering Heihachi's fighting tournament when he was older. He beats out the competition, takes over Heihachi's business, and goes for the eye for an eye mindset by throwing Heihachi off a cliff when he wins.
His family really needs to start wearing parachutes by default.
It's fine though, since Heihachi gets his revenge on Kazuya in Tekken 2 by beating Kazuya at his own tournament and then throwing him into a volcano.
Make it flame retardant.
Between those tournaments though was Kazuya meeting Jun Kazama, and I'm not really sure how their relationship was. I kinda like the anime movie where Jun sees the good in Kazuya from knowing him in the past, but that's all we got. They have a kid who Kazuya was never there for, so their son Jin was raised by Jun alone, and they have a good relationship. Jun is then killed by final boss Ogre, and Jin became a loner. Well, one person came into his life, and it was Heihachi to mess things up. He taught Jin his fighting style, and it seemed wholesome, but in reality, Heihachi was just using him to lure out Ogre, because he's Heihachi, that's what he does. But it turns out Jin inherited the devil powers from his father, and they're stronger and more prominent. That gets Kazuya to come out from wherever he was hiding and pursue his own son so he could get his devil powers. This would likely involve sacrificing Jin, but Kazuya's not much of a sentimental guy. Heihachi is also still in the mix, and he seems to just hate his whole family at this point. Sometimes Heihachi tries to get the devil powers, other times he just has wacky schemes to get rid of his son, grandson, and even father when he comes back from the dead under control of an evil spirit. Heihachi's just tired of all these devils popping up and the old ones returning.
In this case, it sounds like the devil you know is just as bad as the devil you don't.
As noted, Heihachi's father Jinpachi comes back from the dead under possession, but when his true personality breaks through, he seems like an honorable guy. He's not too happy with what Heihachi has done with the family name, so it shows most of these problems start with Heihachi. But those are just the most direct family members. There are still some other ones that add little diversions from the main dysfunction. Li Xiaolan was adopted by Heihachi when Kazuya was young. Heihachi took him in, not out of love, but so he would have someone in Kazuya's age bracket to motivate him to stay strong. So really, Heihachi just used Li and never cared for him as family. Good thing Li has optimism and just went off to become a successful businessman with a somewhat well-deserved ego.
Excellent.
Then there's also Lars, who's the estranged son of Heihachi that he doesn't even know about. He's a true good guy and is just trying to stop all the war and conflict caused by any of the Mishima bloodline. And then off to the side you have Asuka Kazama, who's related to Jun in some way. Maybe a niece? She's really just there to give us the Jun Kazama moveset when Jun is not in the game due to story reasons. But with all the other characters, it shows Heihachi raised one kid to be aggressive and angry, another to be brooding and trustworthy of no one, didn't even know about a third one, and neglected a fourth one who turned out to be the happiest and most normal of the ones that he did raise, showing that the less involvement Heihachi had, the better. Add the adventures of Jun, Jinpachi, and Asuka to the mix, along with the disappointment by Lars when he learns he's actually related to these people, and you have one messy yet entertaining family situation that's certainly not winning any perfect family awards, but is winning this list. Now, what did you think? Who were your favorite families that we discussed, and which fighting game families deserve more recognition for their unity or flaws? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.